Hello, and welcome back to the Ship of Thesis and our Crusader Kings 3 tutorial series. Today we were going to talk about mindset and succession, and we are going to talk about that. However, my objective with these new bout of tutorial videos is to try and keep the videos to 10 to 15-ish minutes in length, rather than have epic saga level videos. The problem is that succession is actually a really fundamental part of the game, and it's quite convoluted in places. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to split this concept up over multiple videos and just release it over a period of a couple of days, just so that you can watch it kind of in bite-sized chunks to make kind of sense. So what I've actually done is we're back in console command. You can see by the lovely purpley pinky values up here. So I've created a few different save files having put a kingdom together. So the fundamental thing that I think confuses people with succession is the type of succession that most people start the game with, which is Confederate Partition. Now, what tends to happen is if you're completely new to Crusader Kings, you'll maybe start out doing the tutorial, for instance, and this is generally known as Newbie Island from Crusader Kings 2 era. And maybe you started as a count and moved your way up to being a petty king. Maybe you managed to, get your own little duchy, and maybe you've slowly conquered your way across Ireland. You've actually got massive tracts of it, like I have here, although I cheated, of course, with console commands. But maybe you've done this, and you're feeling really good about yourself, and your ruler's maybe 70 years old, and then he dies, and your kingdom just splits. So the idea of these set of videos is to try and explain what's going on when that happens, and to give you some strategies as well of how you can better deal with succession going forwards. So before we discuss succession itself, it's probably important that we actually go through the various laws and things that make it up. So if we press the F2 key on our keyboard, or we can press the crown over here to open the realm tab, and then select this succession tab, you can see that this is what your current realm succession law is. So you can see that our realm here is succession law Confederate Partition. It is gender law male preference, or agnatic cognatic, and it is it has a designated heir of none. So just to describe what this means, basically, these are determined. Most people start the game with Confederate Partition and male preference. So let's talk about gender law first, because it's the easiest concept to understand. So if we open this by clicking change, you can see that these are the laws that currently preside over our realm for succession. And it's pretty self-explanatory, but just to make it clear, if it's in the middle and it's equal, everyone is considered equal. Men and women have an equal shot at succession. If it's male preference, then if there is a man and a woman, the man will get the titles in a succession and the woman will get nothing. If there's a man and 10 women, then the man will get all the titles and the women will get absolutely nothing. If it's male only, then only men will inherit, and therefore if you have 10 daughters, you're screwed. The game will be an end for you unless you have an uncle or some other male blood relative that is of your dynasty. So bear that in mind. And of course, on the opposite end of the scale, it's the same, but in reverse. You might want to have female preference, and you might want to have just females that can inherit. And these are likely going to be dictated to by where you start in the world and what your religion is, and culture and things like that. So you can see here, insular Christianity doesn't have the equal doctrine for female dominated, so we can't actually take that law on. Never mind the fact that our vassals wouldn't allow us to, and we don't possess the correct level of crown authority. So that's the easiest concept. I'm not going to spend any more time on that. That just lets you know how succession law works with regard to gender. Next up, we have the actual succession law itself. Now, what succession law you are able to give yourself is generally determined by your level of crown authority and your level of technology. If I close the character tab and we click down here on our innovations screen, you can see these are our current innovations as the Irish culture group. And you can see there is hereditary rule here, which allows us to enact the partition law. and there is royal prerogative, which allows us to raise the high crown authority law. So you need to actually get technology to both raise your crown authority and to be able to adopt a succession law type. Don't worry about that too much at the start of the game. Just know that you do want to try and progress these things, and getting off of Confederate partition is a pretty solid strategy. But I'm also going to teach you how to deal with Confederate partition, so don't feel like some of this was, like I said, mindset. Don't feel like you must get off Confederate partition. It is completely manageable. It's just easier with the other partition types, or the other succession types, I should say. So that's just something to bear in mind. Your innovations do affect what you can select. Your crown authority, which is indeed in turn affected by your innovations, also affects what you can select. You need to get yourself up to absolute crown authority before you can select any other type of succession that is not partition. So that will take you a while. And once you are on that as well, you can designate an heir. So right now, it's just your primary heir is just going to be your eldest son at this point. So if we actually click change on succession laws, we can see the succession laws that are available to us. And again, to be able to change these, we would need our vassals' approval. Currently, all of our powerful vassals don't approve, and we wouldn't be able to change this law. You can see that it's split into two types of available laws, and they are multiple realm heirs and single realm heirs. Now, I'm going to talk about the single realm heirs first, even though you won't get to these until much later in the game. And again, I'm going to talk about these first just because they're the easiest concept to understand. They're quite simple, really, in that primogeniture just means everything goes to your oldest child. Really straightforward. Your oldest child that is eligible to inherit. So again, remember what your gender law is over here. They will get the lot when you die. Really quite straightforward. Ultimogenitor is the reverse of that. Your youngest child will get the lot as long as they're eligible. So again, if you have a male preference and you have a boy and a girl, your eldest boy will get everything under primogenitor, and your youngest boy will get everything under ultimogenitor. So, fairly straightforward. And then lastly, you've got house seniority. So house seniority is basically every one of your house. You can see we're house Brienne. I'm probably butchering that, but I've done my best. So you can see this this house here, is of this unpronounceable for me dynasty, and it has two houses that are part of it. And you can see that we're currently the house head of this house here. The founding house is actually something even bigger than that, although it has no members. Oh, no living members, I should say. And yeah, basically, this house is the one that we're concerned with. Anyone who's inside of this house here, so these living members, basically, would be eligible. So whoever's oldest out of this list would get everything. So again, they're fairly simple concepts, the single realm heir stuff. So I'm not going to spend any more time on them. You won't get them until you're later on in the game anyway. So to be honest, by the time you get to a point where you're able to adopt these succession laws, you probably aren't going to watch my tutorial series anymore. You've probably played plenty of hours and you know what you're doing at this point. So the main crux of why I wanted to do this video was this set of laws up here, the multiple realm heirs succession law. So the hardest one to understand, and therefore the hardest one to deal with, is Confederate partition. Now, what does Confederate partition do? It does give you a description there, but if you're completely new to the game, it might not really make any sense to you. So I'm going to explain it using save file examples. Now, where are we up to? We are already 9 minutes into the video, so we've only got about 6 minutes left if I want to keep this to 15 minutes. So I've loaded an example where we have a duke. And we've conquered our way across all of this island. Let's just imagine that we did that. And for some reason, we didn't create duchies on the way. And that's going to be useful because Confederate partition has a concept of creating titles. So the first thing that it does is it tries to give everything equally amongst your children. So what I've done here is I've just loaded an example where I am a duke. I've got one duchy to my name, and I've got a whole bunch of counties that make up pretty much all of what would be Ireland. Ireland doesn't exist yet. The title hasn't been created. I've only got one son, however. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up the console commands, and I'm going to kill myself. So that's the first of many times this will happen in this this tutorial session, and indeed of the other videos that follow. So we've killed our poor Petty King Merchad here. However, you'll notice that Munster has remained completely intact. Now, this is the first and easiest way for you guys to deal with succession. If you are under Confederate partition and you only have a single heir, then you don't need to worry, because only having one, and I say heir, I mean child. If you only have one child, then you only have one child that can be your heir, and you also, like, you will only split things equally amongst one, and you obviously can't divide by by one, basically. So it will all go to them. So it's nice and easy. So that's the fundamental way to deal with Confederate partition. Now, how do you end up with only one heir? So this is where we talk about the strategies. There's a couple of different ways. One is you could just make sure that you only have one child. And you can do that by maybe you could have your wife pop out a baby and then kill your wife. That's one way. You could have your wife pop out a baby but have picked a wife who's very old. Slightly more risky. She could still bear children. I think 45 is the cutoff for childbearing in this game. But yeah, I mean, that could work. Another way is you could have as many kids as you want, and you could try and get them killed. And I say get them killed because you can't kill your own children in Crusader Kings 3 unless you also have the sadistic trait. So that's the only way that you can actually kill a child of your own. You can kill siblings and I believe parents and all of that, but you can't kill children unless you possess that trait. However, there is nothing to stop you from sending your wonderful firstborn son, who is an idiot who you don't want to keep, in charge of a very, very small army against a much bigger army, and just seeing what happens. Maybe he'll get stabbed in the eyeballs in that particular battle. Wouldn't that be a shame? Or maybe you'll get thrown in a dungeon and die there if you don't ever pay the ransom, or things like that. So that's another option that you could pursue. Yet another option, if you are the house head, which in this particular example, we click on house, we were talking about house just a moment ago, we are the house head, we're the dynasty head. So we actually have the option, if we look here, having killed our main character, we now actually default to, because we don't have children of our own yet, we default to going to the next eligible member of our dynasty, who is our uncle in this case. So if we click on our uncle, he's going to be the guy who inherits next, and then his children will inherit. Now again, we have to be very, very careful that his children are of our dynasty. So you always want to be aware of that when it comes to succession. If ever these children are not of our dynasty, if they're not of House Brienne, game over, right? If, you know, it goes to this guy, then he dies, and these are of his wife's dynasty because he was matrilineally married, then game over. So always be aware of that. But one thing we could do is we could decide, actually, you know what, I don't want it to go to my uncle for whatever reason. I can right click on him, and then under the hostile schemes, I can click this, and you can see I've got the option to disinherit him. You can only do that if you are the dynastic head, and it does cost you a fair bit. You need to spend renown, which you earn. It's this value over here. So renown's a really, really useful resource, and we will be talking about it in a future video where we discuss where you use renown and how it benefits you as a dynasty. But in a pinch, if you need to do something to try and protect your, your more immediate interests, spending a bit of renown and, of course, some prestige as well to disinherit someone might be the way that you want to go. Naturally, they are not very impressed when you disinherit them. So, again, be aware of that. How are we doing? We're up to 14 minutes. So, we're going to put a cut in this video now, I think, and I'm going to explain what's going to come up next. Like I said, I'm going to release a video a day, so don't feel too disheartened. And hopefully you've already got a bunch of concepts. You've seen where the successions start. We've started to talk about Confederate partition. We've included gender laws, and we've even looked at an example, a live example of a succession happening, and how we could deal with, or how we could make sure that this type of succession always happens. In the next video, we will use some of these other save files. So I've created a bunch of different examples here. We've got a duke that's got a single son, we've got 3 sons, we've got kings, and we've got emperors. So we're going to go all the way up the tree, and by the end of it, you should hopefully understand exactly how succession works and a whole bunch of strategies that you can use to try and keep your realm together and remain in as much control as possible. So hopefully that was a good starter. Hopefully that whetted your appetite a little bit and demystified some of it. I will be back tomorrow from your perspective with yet another video on Confederate partition and showing you some further examples. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.